We have a very savvy criminal defense lawyer from the Sarasota area, Byrd, who is there. He's been with us before. Mr. Byrd, is there anything in the background of Judge Owens that suggests he might just throw the book at this defendant even if the prosecutor had agreed to make a deal?
Well, the way they would get around that is that the prosecutor's office would just amend the charge. They would just charge him with, they wouldn't charge him with premeditated first-degree murder. There's only a death penalty in Florida for, first-degree murder, so they could charge him with second-degree murder. They could charge him with capital sexual battery in Florida if you're over the age of 18 and you have had sex or with someone under the age of 12. That's a mandatory life sentence. So the prosecutor's office could control the charge, and then the judge wouldn't have any discretion to give him the death penalty. But in this case, quite frankly, the prosecutor's case is so strong, there was so much public outrage over it, the prosecutor's office just has absolutely no incentive but for to seek the death penalty. I mean, at this point, it looks like the guilt phase is going exactly how they thought it would. The only question will be the sentencing phase. And so to answer your question, no, Judge Owens, they could take it out of his hands, but if it were in his hands based on the, just public outrage, I think there'd be a logical reaction that he may, in fact, give the death penalty.
Do you see any sign at all that the defense is getting any traction for this suggestion that there was a rush to judgment by the police here? They had Ron Chiquette right there, and they gave him a pass fairly early on, and then focused on this defendant, and they haven't looked elsewhere.
Very little. I mean, I definitely think that the defense is making some points. I mean, let's face it, if 200 phone calls came in and let's say 40 of them said it was Joseph Smith, that means 160 others say they were other people. And the police department can't track down every single person that they, somebody called in and said, oh, I think that's my barber, go check out the barber. As far as Ron Chiquette goes, I think that Detective Davis did a good job yesterday in explaining that, listen, I eliminated him, I checked his alibi, we checked his house, we checked his car. No, I didn't, run forensics over every single thing in his vehicle or his house. So I think the defense made a couple of points there, but not nearly enough to probably overcome the suggestion that it's Joseph Smith.
Well, Mr. Byrd, now, let's assume that this case continues to go in the direction it's going here in the guilt phase, and they do find that he is guilty of committing this terrible crime. Do you have any sense of what the defense could then do in the penalty phase to try to keep this man away from death row?
Well, Joseph Smith has 3 daughters. From everything that has been publicized, he was a reasonable father. He was involved with his children's life. He doesn't have anything in his past to suggest that this would happen with children. I mean, he has been violent towards women, but not necessarily children. Much has been made about his record, but his record is a little bit sporadic. Some of them are minor drug offenses and whatnot. He was acquitted in 1997. I'm not even sure that'll get to the jury. So I guess they could portray Joseph Smith as a father figure who was going through a divorce, who missed his daughters, had a drug problem, and just went off and did something inexplicable that he shouldn't be put to death for it. And they will try to play up the father figure role. But by the same token, the fact is he's a father, and then he goes and presumably kills a young girl, may also backfire against him. The only thing I could see happening is Joseph Smith, if he was able to, assuming he's found guilty, is he able to take the stand and give an impassioned, genuine, remorseful plea for his life? I don't know him. He's very rarely spoken. There's no interviews. I'm not sure he's capable of doing that. If he were, then that might be the only chance he has at saving his life.
Well, I've got another question for you, but I want to ask you to stick around here. We have to take a break right now, and then we'll come back to this fascinating subject.
Well, not only that, he's 6'7", so when he stands up and towers over them, maybe they're even more intimidated. And Judge Owens is going, he doesn't want this case to come back. He does not want to see there to be an appeal for any reason, including juror misconduct. So he's going to do everything he can to make sure this case is tried once. And I think it's very effective what he does. And I'll tell you another thing. We've had it happen where jurors have said, I've had cases that have gone on for 4 or 5 days, and on the 4th or 5th day, a juror raises their hand and said, well, actually, I didn't mean to do it, but I had the news on, I was cleaning up around the house, and I did hear something, or I did see something. So it can happen, and that's why they've got 6 alternates.
Well, I think it's very effective here. I do want to thank Byrd for, again, being with us. You're very much insightful, and it's very helpful to get your slant on things. Hope you'll come back.
Thank you. Yeah.
and to Derek Byrd, joining us out of Sarasota, Florida, a veteran trial lawyer, a criminal defense attorney. Derek, it even goes, it's so minutely approved by the U.S. Supreme Court and various appellate courts that even the way you strike the jury is prescribed by the law. For instance, Witherspoon, the Witherspoon test for each and every juror. Explain.
Well, Nancy, even in Florida, we have even more stringent standards. In Florida, they have to go through, to be death penalty approved, you have to go through certain seminars. They have a seminar called Life Over Death. You have to co-counsel a certain amount of death penalty cases. One of the reasons you see Adam DeBruge having a couple of co-counsels there is that there's some talk that Adam one day might become the public defender and stop doing the death penalty cases in Sarasota. And unfortunately, we had a recent death of a public defender who was our other death penalty approved attorney. So two of the attorneys sitting with Adam are there not only to help Adam, to also become death penalty approved. So it's very, in Florida, to even have a higher standard than what they have with the U.S. Supreme Court. So it's a difficult standard, as it should be.
Derek, how about you?
Yeah, and you know, in our courthouse too, the hall is right there. I mean, these guys are sitting out there waiting to go. As a matter of fact, before I came on your show, I saw Captain Jeff Bell, who they're about to call, sitting out there reading his deposition, ready to go. They'll wheel him right in. And it's interesting too, Nancy, because he's one of the lead detectives in this. He's one of their big witnesses. He's the one who the sheriff's department kind of made as their poster boy, so to speak, that got there and said, you know, justice will be done with him. And they're calling him at the end of the day. I imagine they're going to get half of him out today, and they want to lead off with him again tomorrow because he's such a powerful witness, and he's a very, very good witness.
With me at the courthouse, Derek Byrd, a veteran criminal defense attorney. Derek, I think I saw him wearing his police uniform. I'm not sure about that, but did you say he was a detective?
He is a detective, and I didn't see him in his uniform. I saw him in the hall about an hour ago reading his deposition, and he was in a suit, or he at least had a jacket on. He was not in his uniform.
When I just saw a picture of him, he was standing at the back of the courtroom in a dark outfit, and I couldn't make out whether he had on a uniform or plain clothes as a detective would. Very often you will see the prosecution call even detectives in uniform to emphasize that they are on the side of law and order. Still don't know what this guy is wearing. What can you tell me about this witness, Derek?
Well, Captain Jeff Bell, that's his name, and he's been around here for a long time. He's basically the #2 in command at the sheriff's department. He's a very solid witness. I mean, he's one of these guys that trying to cross-examine him is a difficult thing to do because he's very personable. He comes across, he endears himself to the jury. He doesn't talk in narratives. He doesn't go off in tangents. He sticks right to it, yes or no. He's going to be well prepared. As I said, when I just saw him now, he's reading his deposition outside the courtroom. He's one of these guys that probably has read that deposition 10 or 15 times. You're not going to get him on inconsistent statements. He really personifies a detective. He's got, you know, he's got the bald head, and he's kind of in shape and kind of the bigger guy. He's going to make good eye contact with the jury. He's just going to be a difficult witness
Speaking of in shape, I'm taking a look at the defendant right now, Mr. Smith, and someone has certainly been enjoying their 3 hots in a cot. This guy has really gained weight.
You have to wonder, I mean, was that part of the defense strategy to go ahead and have this guy add 50 to 75 pounds? I mean, I've certainly had cases where, you know, the suggestion has been made to the defendant if the issue is identity. I don't even have to suggest it to him. Often they'll show up, and if, you know, when the guy was arrested, he had a beard, and he shows up, and all of a sudden he's clean shaven, he's got a haircut, you know, cleaned up. But clearly Joseph Smith today is probably 50 to 70 pounds heavier than he was at the date of the arrest. And I can almost guarantee you the state attorney's office is going to introduce his booking photo to show what he looked like at that time.
Here in the city of Manhattan, Derek, I got there at 8:15 in the morning. By 5:15, they still were just bumbling around trying to strike this civil trial med-mal case. I thought I was going to jump out of my skin asking the same questions over and over, and the jurors clearly identified the lawyer/culprit and take it out on them.
Well, you know, and Judge Owens is very strict about standing objections too, so almost any objection that's going to have any speaking objection or any merit to it whatsoever, he's going to want you to approach the bench. So in a death penalty case like this, and Adam DeBruge is very thorough, and he knows how to preserve an appellate record, so Adam's going to be objecting to everything and proffering evidence and approaching. I mean, this poor jury is going to be stuck in those seats. In this particular courtroom, they don't rock back. They're very stiff
Yeah.
seats, although it's a fairly new courthouse. It's just uncomfortable, and they're going to be stuck there for days.